Good evening, everyone. How are you all doing? It's 6 p.m.
Good evening.
Evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So we're going to give the others, because we don't even have half of the class on us yet. Let's give them another 5 minutes. I know traffic was horrendous yesterday, so I'm not sure how it is today.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, so let's just give them 5 minutes and then we'll begin, okay? For those of you who haven't read, take this opportunity to start looking through Unit 2. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening,
Hello.
everyone.
Hello, hello.
Good
We're
night.
25 of
Good
us
evening.
are here. Good evening.
Good evening. Okay.
So is there anyone who is here tonight that wasn't here on last week? Can you please briefly introduce yourself? Tell us your name, where you work. If you don't want to say the name of where you work, you can say the industry, and then tell us what do you hope to achieve at the end of this course. I think we have some people that were not here last week. So say hi to us.
Well, I'll start. Hello.
Hi.
My name is Adelma Roche. I'm in the legal profession. I'm an attorney. And I hope that I will get a better understanding of the financial industry and of course the criminal activity, learn more about the criminal activity that may go on or does go on. And of course, to understand compliance. I have no knowledge of compliance. I come from a civil law background.
Okay, welcome. Well, hopefully by the time you're done, you will have lots of knowledge of compliance and you will understand how compliance and law work hand in hand. So welcome to the class. Looking forward to your participation. We're very participatory in this class. And so when you don't speak, believe me, Mrs. Sands, Bodie Scott, we'll call your name. So when you hear me say, hey, Miss Roach, I need you to participate. That's me looking for you to say something, okay?
That's me normally.
What's you normally? You're gonna participate?
I'm very interactive.
Great. All right, I like to hear that. Thank you. Anybody else who wasn't here last week?
Hi, good night. My name is Alicia Smith. I am in the accounting industry. What I hope to gain out of this class is, the usual, a deeper knowledge and understanding of compliance, risk, governance, and anti-money laundering. Thank you.
Okay, Alicia. So you say the usual. What's usual about those four things that you said?
When I say usual, I just was meaning the corny answer, because my real answer is I want to do something, because to me, my current profession is kind of monotonous. So I wanted to do something, exciting, that always have you, on your toes. It's ever changing and evolving. So I just wanted to use the corny answer so I don't talk too long, because I'm kind of long-winded.
Oh, no worries. We have 3 hours to be here tonight. You good? Okay, cool. So, believe me, being in the compliance field, that encompasses all that you've said, you will never, ever, ever, ever be bored, or it will never, ever, ever become monotonous, unless, of course, you're just dealing with one specific thing, which you will find out no compliance officer just deals with one specific thing. So you will forever be challenged. So this is definitely the correct course for you to be taking. So thank you and welcome. Hi, Jada, are you next?
Yes, I am Alicia Butler. So we have another Alicia in the class. I used to be a credit officer at Commonwealth Bank. I have since resigned. So I'm a stay-at-home mom, or should I say this is a study leave. And I just hope to get everything I could out of the class as it relates to compliance.
Okay, welcome. Lucky you, stay-at-home mom. The rest of us have to go work. That's cool. I'm not the stay-at-home type person, so I ain't mad at you. Enjoy your baby or your child as long as you can. And okay, well, at least you have some banking knowledge and you can definitely build on what you already know to help you in this class. So welcome.
Thank you.
Who else is here that wasn't here last week?
Afternoon, my name is Nicolette Farrington. I'm a compliance officer in the corporate service provider field. And as this is a, I guess, international designation for AML, I guess the purpose for me doing this class is to further enhance my career.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
As you all know, I'm a part of BACO. Nicole is a BACO member, so I have some familiarity with Nicole. So welcome, Nicole. You missed last week. We had an exciting time, but you know me, so you know the type of person that I am. This is definitely going to be an exciting class. And last week we picked on all of the accountants. We picked on all of the attorneys for sure, and the regulators, because this class happens to have a few of each of those persons. So we look forward to having you and having you participate. Welcome.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, good afternoon, Rodriguez Strawn here.
Hi, Rodriguez.
Hello, my name is Rodriguez Strawn. I am an attorney, and the outcome that I anticipate to actually receive after I'm done with the class is just an overall general or better understanding of compliance as well as anti-money laundering regulations, both nationally and internationally.
Okay, Rodrigo, welcome. So like I was telling Nicole, last week we stuck it to the attorneys, we as in me. So you are one of, I guess, 5 or 6. So like I said to the other attorneys last week, even though you have, you know, a vast knowledge of the law, compliance is slightly different. So come with your minds open. Do not come with the attitude or the knowledge just simply because you know law, but obviously you're going to be able to use your legal background to build on. So welcome to the Attorneys Club, and don't take it personal when I pick on the attorneys. That's just us having fun, and we will bounce things off of each other, because a lot of times attorneys think that compliance is just something, you know, they could just do because they're an attorney, but you would come to learn, like I did last week, and I've been knowing over the last few years of teaching this course, that a lot of things attorneys just don't know because it's a different animal. Compliance is an entirely different animal, even though similar in nature. So welcome, and we look forward to you participating. Is there anyone else who wasn't here last week? Is that it? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
There was dead silence just now. I thought maybe my internet dropped. Okay, so we said last week, we all work for the most part, and even if you're a stay-at-home mom, you probably work harder than we do. We don't read in class, yeah? We come to class with the anticipation and expectation that everybody's had an opportunity to read. Even if you haven't read in full, you would have had an opportunity to glance over the chapter that we will be discussing tonight. And we're here to discuss, we're here to talk, we're here to learn and dialogue. And at the beginning of the class, we will discuss what the learning objectives are. And hopefully by the time we're done at 9 o'clock tonight, somewhere around there, or earlier if we get through the unit prior to 9, is to ensure that we have mastered through our discussion the learning objectives. So for those of you who have not yet gotten your books or your material, and if you're not a part of the chat, please let us know. I don't see my chat. administrator tonight, or am I not seeing everybody? We have a chat group that we started last week, and it is obviously to ensure that everybody is getting the information that you need. And it's a forum where we share information, we share knowledge, we bounce ideas off of each other. And if there's something outside of the class time that somebody wants to know or discuss, that is the forum in which we do it. We don't do forwards. We try to keep it as professional as possible. It is specifically for this group, and we hope that what we discuss in this group stays in this group. Isn't that what you told me, Alicia? Felicia?
Yes, ma'am. What's said in here stays in here.
Great, great. So let's go. Can somebody read the learning objectives to me? That's the only thing we're going to read tonight, and then we can have a discussion on the first point in Unit 2. Don't all speak at once. You know, I can see all your names. So if I start calling you out, don't feel some type of way.
Learning objectives. The purpose of this unit is to provide an overview of the international and regional bodies that combat money laundering and terrorism financing. 2, to examine some of the international initiatives to counter money laundering and terrorism financing, and look at the relationship between money laundering and various forms of corruption.
I have something different.
You do? I have exactly what David just read. What book
Do
do you
not
have?
have what David read.
Unit
I have,
international context is what it says at the top.
no.
What do you have?
You know what? Don't
We have to get Felicia on
wrong
track.
page. Continue. Sorry, I was on the wrong page.
Unit 2, page 27. You have it.
Yes. Okay, be good.
Okay, great. Thanks, David. So does anybody want to start the conversation around why the knowledge of international initiatives and development is important? That's still on page 27. Any
It's
of my
important.
attorneys, please feel free to jump in.
Joey here.
Thank you.
It's important because it allows, I guess, member countries to kind of evaluate and assess the framework on a global level, so as to help implement local regulations and laws and legislation and stuff, in order to have a robust AML and terrorist financing regime. That's why it's important to kind of know what's happening internationally, because it's evolving in every country and in every place, right? So if you know what's happening globally, then you're able to kind of prepare yourself, us as a country, prepare ourselves for any possible hits or exposures that may happen locally.
Okay, Joey, I totally agree with you, but what if you're not a member country? Remember how we think here? I'm always going to challenge you. What if you're not a member country? Where does that leave you?
Non-compliant.
Well, I was right. If you're not a member country, then that means you don't hit all of the boxes for being one of those safe havens, so to speak, right? I don't know, to be honest, what you do when you're not a member country. I think you have to, I'm going to say, implement legislations and bodies or authorities within the region, and then make application to these international bodies.
That was a question you asking me, or that was a statement?
Well, that's what I'm guessing. That's what you do. You kind of like implement some sort of framework. If you follow the FATF and the United Nations, like their guidelines, you try to implement policies here, and then you make application to those international bodies. That's what I'm thinking you do.
Well, the thing about it is we have so many countries in the world to begin with, right? not everybody is going to be a member of any of
Right.
the, of most of these organizations. However, it's not always about membership. It's about the global minimum standards that are being set, right? Because you don't
Okay.
necessarily have to be a member to maintain a standard or to be expected to maintain a standard, yes? Anybody that deals in financial services or anybody that just if you're in the world, because if you're dealing in fiat currency, you're going to need a bank, and then you're going to need a correspondent banking relationship, yeah? So there are minimum standards that are set by certain international organizations, and globally, it is expected that all of the players, right, whether you're a member country or not, kind of adhere to those minimum standards. It's almost like having rules that governs financial services in the financial services sector and other sectors, as long as there is some payment or exchange of funds or transfer of funds. So these are standards that are set, and usually they are minimum standards. So that is essentially why it is important for you to know what the initiatives are and what the developments are. Now for us, you mentioned FATF, we say FATF for short. Who is FATF and what is FATF known for? What is it that FATF does?
The Financial Action Task Force Day is an intergovernmental.
Oh.
It's an international government body that I guess somewhat they set standards and policies for us to be guided by.
For money laundering and terrorist financing.
That help us better with combat money laundering and terrorist financing.
Yeah, they call them the recommendations, the 40 recommendations. Oh, got it.
40 plus 9. 9 special.
That's gone back down to 40.
Oh, it has?
When?
Oh.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
They have amalgamated them.
Yeah, if you read it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they still call it 40, and then I thought they still just say and the 9 special, so they don't recognize.
They don't say 40 plus 9 anymore.
Oh. Wow.
I just wanted to add that they also do assessments or mutual evaluations of their members.
And they have sub bodies, right? Did you guys read that?
Yes.
Yes.
FATF style regional bodies.
Yeah, they have regional style bodies because, so what is the body that the Bahamas falls under?
CFATF.
And what does that mean? What is CFATF?
In Financial Action.
Caribbean Financial Action Task Force.
Agreed. So what else are they known for that we have experienced as a country?
Blacklisting, enforcing, enforcement.
And the blacklisting.
For enforcing or using persuasion to jurisdiction. I say, and using persuasive methods or negative or positive peer pressure to get jurisdictions to comply with the international standards, to ensure that the regime is robust and that we basically keep each other in line or manage the risk to the financial system.
Right. Now, when we think about the recommendations and how they have evolved, what are some of the things that you think about from just being in the Bahamas, working in the Bahamas? Do you see it as fair? Do you see it as unfair? Do you see it as neutral? How do you view the recommendations and their implementation in countries around the world, specifically to the country in which you live?
Boy.
That is a loaded question.
Yes, it is. I was about to say that.
And that is designed to help all of you think about what it is that we really discussing, right? Because if you think about it, the first a whole third of the chapter is dedicated to FATF. So we have to think about not only what FATF is, but how does FATF actually affect you? Because it does. And so that's where that question comes from. You don't have to tackle every piece of it, but I want everybody to be a part of the conversation because it's a conversation that we have all the time, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very common conversation in financial services circle. So somebody unpack it for me. Let's go. You don't have to tackle all of it, but
I think some of the requirements could be a bit onerous for a small jurisdiction such as ours, especially when it comes to any requirements or standards dealing with terrorist financing. You know, you had to implement, you know, laws and regulations surrounding terrorist financing. But really and truly, I don't think the Bahamas as a jurisdiction experiences terrorist financing, especially not on a plane or on the same level as a country like Trinidad and Tobago or, you know, Middle Eastern countries. So I think sometimes the requirements could be not as balanced for smaller jurisdictions. That's my
okay. So let me challenge you, Nicolette. So we talked last week that anytime we have a conversation, I'm going to be challenging your thinking because I don't want us to just think one way. We have to see things, you know, from lots of different sides. So think about it. You do know that the terrorists that committed the heinous act literally came to the Bahamas. You do know that we had accounts open in the Bahamas for those persons, right? So even though we think that, terrorism may not naturally and normally occur in the Bahamas, that doesn't mean that terrorist funds and finances cannot flow through our financial services system now, does it?
Correct.
Sorry,
but it wouldn't be a lower risk area? Sorry.
But remember, because of the risk-based system that FATF has implemented, organizations have to determine that. A country has to determine that, yes? Because remember, countries are also does risk assessments. You know, we're doing risk assessments all the time as countries, and the regulators would send out those surveys and things of that nature. Even though you may consider it low risk, that doesn't necessarily mean a lot of institutions consider it low risk, because if your head office is in the Middle East, you stand a better chance of your financial institution being used, yes? So organizations and institutions have to determine for themselves the level of terrorism risk, even if they're in the Bahamas, yes?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Quick question, you had mentioned, you'd given a scenario just now about terrorists. Who were these terrorists that you had mentioned? I didn't catch it.
The September 11 guys were in the Bahamas.
Oh, they had accounts in the Bahamas?
Some of them did, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And some of them even came to the Bahamas and were gladly turned around.
Yes, they were turned back.
Right. So I'm just saying that because of our proximity to the US and because of we're very open. Think about it. We have direct flights from Latin America. We have direct flights from South America. We have direct flights from Europe and from North America. So when you think about the Bahamas, even though we may be a small country, our financial services system is comparatively large in nature for the size country that we have. So we have to be very vigilant as it relates to terrorism financing, not just, you know, AML crimes and things of that nature. And we don't always think about it. Sorry, Patricia. I don't know why my internet is freaking out. We don't always know who and why and what and when we're going to be used. So we still have to be as robust as possible in our frameworks. Yes?
Right.
I was
Patricia's saying I'm coming in and out.
I can hear you okay with my
okay.
No, you were going in and out. You're better now, but you were cutting in and out. I heard that as well.
I live in the back of God's back, so forgive me. But you know, the service isn't always the same in every place. I'm not in central New Providence.
Well, you sound like my neighbor, so that's why you're not going in and out. But I think that these entities don't really care what certain jurisdictions think, because it's, to me, is, you can understand why you would want to put best practices in place. You want to protect your financial system. And I think their position is, if you want to play with the big boys, then you have to put on big pants.
Yep.
We have the power, we have the resources, and you know, for those of us who've been around for a while, we lost a significant part of our financial services
Offshore.
offshore, and yes, due to how we were being handled. So we have lived that as a country, and so, you know, we just have to comply. And I mean, that isn't, you know, that doesn't make you feel good, but that's just what it is. That's my 2 cents.
I agree. I mean, and like you say, if you won't be, I mean, if you won't play the game, you gotta play to win. So you can't want to be best in class, leading jurisdiction. You know, we call it what, you know, an international financial center. You cannot want to have those titles without putting the requisite minimum standards in place. It's just not going to happen. When you're competing with London and New York and different places around the world, right? Global international financial centers as well, Hong Kong, and then you have your Caribbean competitors, BVI and Cayman, right? So the thing about it is, we look to minimum standards to be a level playing field. Now, from my perspective, I am not entirely convinced that it is a level playing field. However, we can't sit back and worry about achieving or attaining a level playing field, because life in general isn't a level playing field, yeah?
Right.
So we have to do what is necessary for us. We have to ensure that the minimum standards are in place, because unlike bigger countries, if you take away tourism during a pandemic and you have a falling away of financial services, where does that leave us as a country? So if we have to shore up our second largest pillar, then that's something that we in the industry have just, like someone said, pull up your big girl pants and get it done. Anybody else have any thoughts on FATF and their regional style bodies? There's lots that has been said in the book. So I want us to try and ensure that we cover some of the things that's been said, that is being said in the book, because when you have your questions, I am sure that something is going to come up where you're going to need to use FATF. Every semester, you are going to use FATF, because that is, of course, the global standard. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
So there's some other things about FATF. Let's talk about transparency. Let's talk about global cooperation between authorities. Yeah? Let's talk about wire transfers. What are we seeing in that space because of FATF?
They're now requiring a lot. They're now requiring you to disclose the sender, your information, as well as the sender information when you sending off wires now. They want it to be fully disclosed as to whom you're sending the wire to, and which jurisdiction you're sending the wire to.
There's more to it than that, but thank you. I agree. There's some other things.
Seems as though it's easier to send a wire transfer now.
Before it was, you know, you had to go in. Now you can just do it online quickly.
Right, but what about the information that they're requiring, Joey?
I think even when you do it online, you still have to submit the information to the branch before it's released, right?
Yes,
I
you do.
think
Yeah, you do.
name, account number, and address. That would be it, right? And purpose of funds.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
No, then you get more than that to put in there.
What else?
No. I think it depends on the
You
amount.
gotta tell me who would go into, how much it is, what it for. Let me see that passport, something.
I remember putting in no passport information.
I think central bank gave a lot of the commercial banks delegated authority. Like in the past, if you were wiring, you had to bring everything, the stove and the fridge and all your inner guts.
Right.
But I think now if it's under a certain amount and if you're doing it online, you have to provide for certain the physical address of the receiving person and as well as their their bank.
But that's always been a part of it, though.
Yeah, to my knowledge,
Unless I'm missing something, that's always a part of it. Their name, their address, the amount, source of funds, purpose of funds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know that I missed anything. I've not had to attach
Y'all
any
never
IDs.
heard of scandals where they were leaving out information in wire transfers to get around like sanctions things?
But if they leave out necessary information, the funds won't be released, right?
In this day and age, yes. But previously, you were able to send funds and leave out a lot of information. Yeah.
Well, I didn't have that experience.
Don't the funds go to a intermediary bank, or it wasn't like that back in the days?
It was like that back in the day, but how it was set up, you could have left out certain information and it would still have been sent.
So that's the intermediary bank to stop it.
Right.
But it seems like it's easier to send money, like, okay, like I send money to my brother by way of MoneyGram. And once you go in that first time and you take your passport and your driver's license or your passport, it has to be a passport. They don't take voters cards or anything like that. And how they have it set up is go to a different branch. If you go to one branch today, and a different branch tomorrow, they don't share information. So like you have to take your passport to the other branch. But once you've done that initial passport and whatever other government issued ID, you just go and you literally just put your number and you just send it. So it's not as like, I guess they'll carry you as rough as the bank.
Because they're the money service providers, they do have AML requirements. However, once you would have given them your passport, they are required to keep that. So even though they may not share information from one to the other because they are franchises and they may not all be owned by the same person or company, they are required to maintain your ID on file. So it may seem easier than the bank, and in some instances, depending on where your brother is located, it may be easier. However, when you think about the cost, when you think about the amount, and when you think about the reason for sending the money, then you decide, should I use a bank or should I use a MoneyGram or Western Union? Yeah? Is that what you're finding in your day-to-day lives? If you're sending money anywhere?
Well,
like you said, it's really depending on the amount you're sending and the reason behind sending it. Because
yeah, I think
a lot of time, if you let's say you're a business owner some business owners send wires out like 15,000 every other week. You wouldn't put that in the hands of MoneyGram, because in the event that something was to go wrong, then the bank would be able to send out a trace. And I don't know how secure they are with tracing their wire, with their transfers. As to say, get your money back.
So they have the ability to trace them. Is the fact of the matter is, do they have any recall? You know, sometimes if things go wrong and you catch it soon enough, the bank is able to recall the funds.
Yeah, they can.
They can do bank to bank, right? They reach out to their counterparty and they can place a hold on the funds and then recall it. I'm not sure how that works when you're using a money service business though. So what else? What else is well known about FATF and what they do and what they're known for?
They look at new methods and trends of how terrorists try to find ways to launder money.
Yeah, they do that for pretty much all of their recommendations, because it's not only the terrorist, you know, with the money, they look at all the money laundering threats, yeah? And they compile, like you say, what the trends are, what they're seeing. And then they also use that information to enlighten their membership and countries around the world that this is what they're seeing. If there's a specific type of fraud going on, if there's a specific type of money laundering, anything related to financial crime, they tend to look at it and see what's going on, because they are so involved with so many countries. And obviously these countries have to be at a standard and they share information at a certain level. They are able to compile that information better than any one country, because they can tell you what they're seeing globally as opposed to just in the Bahamas or in the US. Yeah. So that is definitely one of the key things that we look to them for, because you can go on the FATF's website and you can look for typologies all day to help you to understand what the trends are. Anything else?
They set standards towards improving transparency along the lines of like, especially with PEPs, especially with politically exposed people, they make a lot of standards they put in place now for banks to follow when dealing with a PEP and how they should be rated.
So tell us, if you know, Mr. Brown, how is that process and how does that process works in a bank, if you work in a bank or if you're familiar with how it works?
For us, if we, upon opening, like let me use an account opening process, for example. With every account opening process, we have a specific form as we ask the client, are you a politically exposed person or are you somewhat related to a politically exposed person? Now, you don't come outright and ask certain things. You'll beat around the bush in some sense just to get more out of the customer. But once you have determined that, then it's a whole different form you would have to fill up. Now, immediately that person would be labeled as high risk, and management would put a higher due diligence on that customer. It's not saying that they won't be onboarded. However, they will be onboarded, but management will watch that account process and see how they manage the account for a time period. So they'll be placed like in a whole different, the bank will label them more on high risk field. So they'll be more in a whole different field from a regular customer just opening up.
So here's, I agree with what you say, but we live in the Bahamas and we all related somewhere, right? How does that actually work in reality and in practical terms? Because I'm going to give you an example with myself. So I sit on a couple of boards. One of them is the Bahamas Financial Services Board. And I went to do a transaction in the bank the other day, and here I was being labeled a PEP. And I'm like, I'm a what? Oh yeah, you're a PEP. And I'm like, please explain to me how you see me as a PEP. Because I'm thinking, okay, I know I have some affiliations, but is it close enough to be a PEP? I know I have some family relatives. Are they close enough to be a PEP? Like, where are you getting this PEP definition from for me? And then they came and they said, oh, you know, you're a director on the Bahamas Financial Services Board. And I was like, what? Oh, that's a quasi-government board. Yeah, but it has professional private institutions as members. I just happen to be representing my institution, and prior to that, representing BACO. So how does that come across as being a PEP? And for about 2 weeks, I argued with their compliance department, and I'm like, I'm not a PEP. I'm not a PEP. I'm not a PEP. And they were like, oh yeah, you are a PEP. And I'm like, okay, either y'all take me from being a PEP list, or I'm going to come in the bank and escalate it myself. And let me teach y'all what a PEP is. Let me bring you what central bank says a PEP is. And obviously, I'm not that person because I'm just sitting on a board. Because if that was so, I'm not the leader of the board. I'm not a political appointee. I just happen to be representing the institution that I work for. And so in the Bahamas, because we're so closely knitted, I think the PEP dealings can get very muddy. It's very gray. It's a very gray area, because you can't tell me all of y'all on this class tonight ain't know a PEP or ain't related to a PEP. I mean, it's only 100,000 us in, you know, in Providence. I mean, so let's be honest. With a country with less than 500,000 people, we are all either closely connected to or related by blood to a PEP. So, hi.
Okay, now I know some organizations, when it comes to PEPs, they would say, I guess, after 3 years, they're no longer a PEP. And other organizations would look at it as once a PEP, always a PEP.
Right, and that's a decision that organizations have the right to make, because remember, based on FATF, and which in turn kind of guides our regulatory framework, it's a risk-based approach. So if your organization determines once a PEP, always a PEP, I mean, and let's be honest, I mean, you're gonna the same people all your life, right? You don't just stop being a PEP because you stop being in office. Let's be honest. But it's a determination that has to be made by the institution, because it's based on their risk level and their risk tolerance and their risk appetite. Yeah?
Correct.
Some countries, I can tell you, Canada has that as once a PEP, always a PEP.
Yeah, they do.
So obviously the institutions that emanate out of Canada, they're going to have that same policy.
So why that 3 year? I know the person that spoke just now mentioned a 3 year and then 3 years and then no longer PEP. Why is that the case though? Because they, even though they may no longer be in government or something of that sort, they still have their connections that they would have formed while a PEP, while they were a PEP. So why take them off, especially within 3 years?
Because that's a determination that the institution makes. If you think about it, if you keep everybody, right, depending on your institution as a PEP, that process can be very difficult to manage, let's just say in 10 years. If nobody is falling off of that list, your list is growing exponentially, yes?
And then today's list, they're not only for the people that were in, I guess, government, but people associated with them and affiliated with them. So, you know, their cousins, their nieces, their children.
I know, their family members, they're
on this list.
Yeah. So that is why some institutions take the stance that, hey, after a certain time, some people do it for 5 years. After a certain time, we will remove you. But obviously they will still watch, right? But they will remove you because it's very difficult in this country, I can tell you, to do business as a PEP. Because everybody thinks, oh, you're a PEP, so you should be delisted. Banking for PEPs in this country is not easy to do.
I was gonna say, I think it's a I think that practice needs to be looked at. I think it's kind of, I mean, you understand why it's being done, but I think Besides persons who are politically exposed, there are other persons who need to be put on that list for other reasons.
But then you may not have to have a PEP list. You just have them rated high. So you can have a high risk list that
Right.
does not have anything to do with being a PEP,
Being
which
politically
banks do have.
Right, right.
So banks do have a PEP listing, then they have a group of people that they call high risk. And then even though they're the same level of risk, they're separate lists. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, so that happens all the time. Every bank, from my experience and knowledge, they maintain two separate lists because PEPs are actually approved by senior management and the board. The board of directors have an obligation to know every PEP that is in their institution. Because central bank needs you to know who you're banking, and that's a board responsibility.
Okay.
And in this country, all us is PEPs, if the truth be told. Because we only probably 2 persons removed from everybody who ever been in parliament, who in parliament now, and who will be in parliament.
True.
Yeah?
Yep.
Right. Yep. What else is far to? Let's talk about the evaluations. I think Nicole brought it up earlier. Have anybody heard about the evaluations? You should hear about the evaluations if you could say be blacklisted. That's the only way to get blacklisted, right? Fail an evaluation.
Yep.
So what good news do we have as a country as it relates to this? Something happened recently in the last 2 months. Come on, people, be in financial services.
I
Where
think
are lawyers? Hold on, wait. Where are lawyers? Where are lawyers? Rashida, what's her name? Who just come on tonight? Miss, oh
Roach.
Father, Aldema, David,
Adelma?
David.
Okay.
Somebody else was on tonight. Who's an attorney? She just came on tonight. What's her name?
I think weren't we removed?
Yes, ma'am. You're correct.
You know, I'm not a financial person. I told you I'm a civil person, but not in civil chambers. But yeah, we were removed.
Right, and you don't have to be in financial. We have some people who ain't have no dealings with financial.
And that's me. And that's me.
Right, but this was a big deal for the country, so all of us should have known it.
It was.
Right, and that's why I say where my lawyers are.
And those persons who were anyway, I kind of give away where I'm coming from, but it was a big deal. It was a big deal.
It is a big deal, and I can tell you the Bahamas has worked very hard. And I can also tell you, after having and speaking with the AG recently, he is trying to get us to be 40 out of 40. That is his goal this year. 40 out of 40. He wants us to get 40 out of 40 largely compliant. And we in the compliance field are supporting him all the way. We're now 38 out of 40. And so there are 2 more that we need to work on, so that he will be able to go back and see if we can get those 2 recommendations re-rated. And if we do that, we will have a fantastic year in financial services.
Are you able to say which 2 are still being
Later.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Later.
Okay.
Those the taxes, I think.
Brittany said we're complying in 38 out of 40. Brittany, do you want to say which 2? Do you know which 2?
I'm not sure about the exact 2, but I know one of them is, I think, non-governmental organizations. That's one that we need to work on, but I forget the other one.
Digital assets is the other one. Seeing that Brittany said one, I'll say the next one. We need to get our digital assets. You know, we have the DARE bill, right? For those of us who SEB licensed persons, that we have a DARE bill that talks about digital assets and things of that nature, coins and crypto and all of that. So we need to get certain things in place with digital assets and with our charity, not-for-profit institutions, organizations. And if we can get them where they need to be, we will be 40 out of 40 largely compliant, which is an enormous feat. So kudos to everybody that has contributed to that over the years.
Sorry, Farida.
Hi.
So is it where then they haven't considered the DARE bill, or are they saying that more is required other than the DARE bill?
I think the DARE bill has just been passed. You know, for FADA, it's not just about implementation, it's about effectiveness as well. Yeah, they now have to. So I think we have to kind of show that we know, number one, where our risks lie. And if you are in that space, you would know that there's a survey that's going around that's due tomorrow to go back to the regulators. So we can see and we are able to risk grade where we are as a country in that specific space.
Okay. Sorry, I called you by your first name.
Pardon?
I say, sorry, I listen, called you by your first name.
Oh, no, Farita's fine.
Okay.
We're all grown here. And then the not-for-profits, you all know who we are in the Bahamas. Churches and charities and things like that, they used to have no rules. So they're slowly getting accustomed to being under a specific regulatory regime, right?
Right.
You all know we go in the Bahamas. When it comes to certain things that are sacred cows to us, we ain't trying to change. What you mean the church got to tell the government what they making and this and that? And so it's been a slow uphill climb for that one.
Okay.
Because, you know, I mean, and I given my tithe to the church. I mean, and how's that the government business where the church getting their money from? Because that's what the church think, right?
Yeah.
Tithe. I ain't asking you where you getting your tithe money from. If you tithe off your drug business, between you and God, that ain't have nothing to do with me. And that mindset has kind of, you know, impeded, and even other charities impeded the, I guess, the speed in which we needed to be moving at as it relates to charities. Because, you know, if you think about it, what is the core based on the trends and the typologies from FADF, what is the core place where terrorists get their finances?
And
and charities, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Organization.
Exactly. And so that is something, because we don't think terrorism in the Bahamas, we don't even think about it like that. Because for us, we ain't giving out no terrorists our money, right? However, we still have to be able to comply with the minimum standards.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
So, it talks about countries with strategic deficiencies. We used to be one of those. We're off of that list. And FADF also puts out reports. So you can go on FADF website. I would highly recommend that you bookmark that page. There is a lot of information. You don't have to overwhelm yourself, but you can go and you can see where the Bahamas is at. You can go and you can read on typologies and trends and just basic information for financial services. It is an absolutely fantastic place to get information from. Just go and read some of their reports.
I didn't get you. You were saying that
the FADF website. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
The FADF website I was saying is a fantastic place to get information on trends and typologies and what's going on in the Bahamas and other countries. It's a fantastic place to get information from. It's a reservoir of information. You heard me, Ms. Roach?
by my first name.
I can call you Adelma. Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
I can
I'm
hear
here.
you.
Yes.
I can hear you loud and clear.
can
I
hear
can
you.
hear you fine.
Yes, I can hear you.
You are
When you go
fine.
quiet, when you go quiet, it makes me think my internet is dropping. So answer back, please.
I think the more of us, I think if too many of us have our mics open, it starts echoing all over the place. So at least I'm allowing you to speak so it doesn't echo too much.
Okay, great. But if you see me ask a question and nobody's answering, say, I can hear you, Farida or Miss Sands, whatever you want to call me.
Okay.
So if you look on page 38, you would see that there is a list of guidance that FATF had put out, guidance and reports. I know you're going to say you don't got no spare time, but I'm going to say it anyway. In your spare time, have a read. It'll definitely make you a more knowledgeable person. We talked about FATF and their risk-based approach, and we just finished talking about national risk assessments. So we have to recognize that we are in a world where we're competing globally for financial services. We also have to recognize that even though we may have lost a chunk of it, we still have a lot of new business coming back our way. Different business outside of the private wealth management space, but we just had FTX, our headquartered here. There are lots of crypto companies and digital asset companies that want to move to the Bahamas because we have the DARE bill in place and we have the regulatory framework. So we have to start thinking outside of just banking and trust. We have to start thinking, hey, there are also commodity companies moving here, trading desks are moving here. There are different products, and as the world moves to a more technological space, we have to keep pace as financial services participants and industry participants. Agreed?
Yeah,
Agreed.
agreed.
Right. So let's move to the European Commission and Council. Who can tell us a little bit about that? It's on page 41 for those of you who are following in the book. Hold on, ain't nobody read. You're all going very, very quiet.
I guess you could say the EU represents the European Commission and Council. And I don't know how long it's been happening, but it seems like in the last 5 years, this is my question. How is it that individual countries can, quote unquote, blacklist jurisdictions?
Ma'am, I'm only a teacher. Ma'am, I don't have the answer for you for that.
Okay, but I mean,
Like,
okay.
Like France blacklisted the Bahamas several months ago, right?
Correct. So no, but Mrs. Bodie Scott.
Yes,
ma'am. So what I'm asking is, in the past it used to be bodies, global standard setting bodies. And so I'm really asking academically, how is it that a country is able to do that? Or unless the country themselves decide that they can do that, and because of their involvement in the EU and maybe other entities, it has an impact on the jurisdiction who's blacklisted. That's what it seems like. So where does it end? I mean, maybe is my question. That's rhetorical. But more importantly, how does that work then?
Okay, so I'm going to respond to you in a very politically correct way.
Okay.
So here's my answer. If France, as a sovereign country, decides that they do not want their citizens, residents, or nationals to do business with a country that's on a blacklist, a gray list, a white list, or pink list, they have the right to determine what it is that they want for their citizens. Yes, they can in and of themselves decide that as a country, we will not allow you to do business with that country. It's as simple as that.
Okay.
It's not as simple as that, but that's the politically correct, simple answer.
And usually when they make those decisions, those type decisions trickle down into even our banking industry, because certain countries we can't send wires to.
Agreed.
But that's so draconian though.
And it's not
draconian.
It's not because of we don't want to do business. It's because, okay, America have them on a blacklist. So we can't send a wire to them because our correspondent bank won't forward that wire on if he was to send it to one of those jurisdictions.
But okay, so remember when France blacklisted the Bahamas several months ago, right?
It's been more than months. It's been several years ago.
No, that was something in the news recently, a few months ago, about France taking a stance, right?
It was just being
us.
reiterated. We were blacklisted before COVID.
Oh, okay. Because I'm thinking, right, if a Frenchman has business ties here in the Bahamas, right? And then, France just says, okay, as of February 11th, we have blacklisted the Bahamas. This is a hypothetical, right? Then what happens to the Frenchman's business? Like, is he not entitled to receive profits or be affiliated with a business in the Bahamas anymore? That's a bit draconian, eh? So I say that to say that I understand Miss Campbell's position where she says, why could a country take that stance as opposed to an international body or authority where, member countries or associate countries are a part of?
Think of it in this way, and it'll be easy for you to digest. Aren't we always on a level 3 or level 4 as it relates to travel with the US?
Right, all the time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you make a decision whether or not you still want to travel. Now they can easily send out an advisory and say there will be no travel. However, they put out levels and listings. Remember, after September 11th, ain't nobody was going nowhere, right? As a sovereign country, you have the right to do what you please to ensure that you protect, or what you consider to be protecting, your people. And that's what it is. If you think about it, you would hope that persons would act in accordance with their blocks, like a European Union bloc, CARICOM bloc, things of that nature, right? But hey, you can step outside and you can do whatever you want to do. We don't know where it ends. We just know that we need to be compliant with the major global players, and that would be the EU, and that would be FATF and OECD, yes? And then we can determine as a country where we stand with singular countries, because it makes no sense, even though we're trying to get off of that French blacklist, it makes no sense bowing to France and we still on the FATF blacklisting.
Right, okay, so focus on the big boys.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything in your life, right? You have to risk rate it, prioritize. What is more important? FATF carries way more weight than one country.
Right.
So let's focus on getting off of that list. Let's focus on working on the 40 recommendations and being largely compliant, because that is the global minimum standard. If one country chooses to go outside of the norm and do their own thing, then so be it. There's nothing you can do about it. Complaining is not going to change it. It's going to hurt us slightly as a country. However, it will hurt more if you don't focus on the big things.
Ms. Sachs, how from your seat as Baco president, how satisfied are you with our level of compliance as a country, holistically?
30 out of 40. If you get 30 out of 40 in any class, you smart.
Agreed.
Think about it. What you think, Patrick?
Fair point. Fair point.
It took us a while to get here. I can tell you from behind the scenes, it has been an enormous challenge. And everybody has come together to ensure that we as a country have gotten off of the list. We have bent over completely backwards in some cases, but it is what it is. And we have to do what is in the best interest of our country. Even though we do some of those things, kicking and screaming and fighting, we have to look at the bigger picture. We are a small island state, and there are some things you just have to do in order to be a part of the game. If you want to play, put your big girl pants on. Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
I think we've done a super job at getting 30 to 40. If you look at the AML compliant regime in this country, you'd be hard pressed to find another country as good as us, to be honest. Have you tried opening up a bank account in this country recently, Patrick?
You cut out just now for me. What did you ask?
Have you tried opening up a bank account in this country recently?
No, ma'am.
Okay, let me tell you, it's very difficult to do. And if you can't get a bank account, you can't launder the money through that.
Lots of paperwork.
But I'm being devil's advocate. That's not always a good thing.
I agree completely. It's not good for business. However, when it comes to being recognized as a clean jurisdiction, it helps.
But yes, it helps, but then also it contributes to the lack of ease of doing business. So I think you have to find a good balance.
Have you ever tried balancing anything, Ms. Campbell?
Excuse me?
Okay. You see how that works, right?
I mean, life, just living is an exercise in balancing.
Exactly, and you know how that works, right? The minute you think you right on key, something comes to tip you over and your hand go down the next way or one way.
Right.
Yeah, and so that's what happens with countries. And then think about it. I mean, in your life, you are in control for the entire duration of your life, right? In a country, we in the Bahamas, we only give you 5 years. The minute you start to get things on track, you got upset us and we can ship you out. So in all honesty, we know how difficult and how long it takes for us to get things done in our own personal lives. Imagine from a country's perspective, the minute you get settled is the election again, and we ain't for that. So we changing you. Think about it. Think about how difficult it is to get anything worthwhile and significant accomplished in 5 years as a country.
Miss Farida, I applaud Baco and the other regulators and so forth, because Bahamians don't like to rule. So I really applaud you. We've come a very, very, very long way. I'm being a devil's advocate tonight.
That's fine.
Okay. And it's better to be strict. It's better, slack ships sink. So it's better to be a little too strict than to be a little, than to be too slack. So I don't have a problem with that.
I totally agree. And maybe because I've been in this space for a while, I think we as Bahamians tend to think, why do we need to do this? And why do we need to do that? And I think I've said it over and over again, even as president of Baco during my tenure, I try to educate Joe Public, because the average Bahamian does not appreciate, understand, and recognize what happens to us if we get blacklisted.
Right.
You know, they just see it as, oh, that's the bank problem. No, 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 it's all of our problem. The Bahamian dollar does not trade on any global currency market. Anything you do outside of the Bahamas, you have to convert it to US dollar.
Right.
And if you're blacklisted, you're going to have a difficult time doing business on the global market. And we as a people, because we're so accustomed to things being so easy for us, we don't connect the dots. We just go online and shop. You don't just go and shop on things on Amazon. That B dollar currency has to be converted. You don't see all of it happening, and so you don't even think about it, right?
Mhm.
But trust me, for some countries that have been blacklisted and then they have been dropped with their corresponding banking relationships, life gets very difficult when you find yourself as a country in a position on a blacklist. And it definitely makes the ease of doing business no longer easy.
Could you even imagine, Frida, if the dollar was devalued, the impact?
Precisely, precisely. And I think because we have managed to get ourselves off of the blacklist, and we're managing to ensure that our AML regime is in place and we have a robust compliance culture, that takes work, and not only work to achieve, work to maintain. You see how many of y'all in this course? You know how many students I've had over the last 6 years? And it isn't because, oh, everybody just wants to be a compliance professional. The need is there. There is a need, because persons like me, we're not working in you know, the institutions anymore and being in-house compliance. We're going on, and we're moving on with our lives, and we're starting our own things. And so people like you that are now doing the class have to think about, okay, I'm doing this, but I'm doing this to contribute to the betterment of my country, not just to make a good salary.
Mhm.
And if you're not going to do it for the betterment of your country, don't bother. Because remember, we talked last week about the risks, right?
I missed that.
Yes.
They can bring you up to speed in the chat, Nicole.
Yeah. Okay.
So we were talking about the European Commission and Council. And so whilst the EU is a bloc, like you were saying, Joey, Austin, some of the countries do come out and do their own thing, but there's nothing you can do about it. So the EU Council has directives on the prevention of the use of the financial system for the purpose of money laundering. There are lots of money laundering directives. And when I say lots, I'm not talking about a significant amount, but for you to keep up with them, there are a few of them that you should be aware of, especially if you have clients in Europe, or you have any type of partnerships or relationships in Europe. You have to know what the 3rd and 4th and 5th AML directives are all about. I would hope that you guys would have read it, because it's going to come in handy. Maybe, I don't know what the paper, what your assignment says as yet. I haven't seen the questions. Does anybody have the questions as yet for the first paper?
I do not.
No, neither do I.
Yeah, I think it's on.
Yeah,
Yeah, ma'am.
it's actually on the website.
It's on
It's
the
on
web.
the
have it. I
website.
can send it in the WhatsApp group. I have it.
Yes,
It's
Okay,
on the
thank you.
website.
drop it in the WhatsApp group for me. I think it's Ava. Drop it in the WhatsApp group for me, please.
Thanks, Ava.
Okay, sure, no problem.
So you'd see that they have 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, lots of AML directives. You have to, even if you don't have to know it back to back because you're not in that space, it's good to know from a knowledge perspective. Yes?
Yeah.
So we were talking about wire transfers earlier. So the EU wire transfer regulations, what does that talk about? What is that all about? Because some people were saying, oh, the wires haven't changed that much. Oh, yes, it has changed. What is that specific regulation about? And what does that correspond to in the Bahamas? Which law, act, regulation, what does it correspond to?
I think it's the Beneficial Owners Act, if I'm correct.
No, we're talking about the EU Wire Transfers Regulation Act. Which one?
Oh, sorry.
Which act in the Bahamas does that one corresponds to?
The Banking Act, I believe.
No, I think.
Wires transfer rules, eh?
I didn't get what you say, Princess.
You mean the financial transaction?
Is it the FPRA? The wires rules.
Is it the FPRA? That's it right there. Yes, I think so.
No, we have our own. What is it? Somebody go look it up while we talking.
The Financial Transaction Reporting Act?
No, it's not that one. We have our own.
Wire transfer rules or something like that, right?
Yeah, go look it up. Somebody Google it.
Yeah, anti-terrorism.
The Financial Transactions Reporting Wire Transfers Regulations.
Boom, there you have it. That's it.
Repeat that, please.
Financial Transaction Reporting Wire Transfers Regulations, 2018.
Financial transaction.
I sent it in the group.
I'm trying to add somebody that has asked me to add them in the group. Your line techie.
Is there a WhatsApp link that you could probably just send, and then those of us who are not in the group can just click the link and we'll automatically join?
Well, let me just tell you, line techie.
I think if you click the chat, so click the top and then it should be in the info.
Denisha is in here tonight, because Denisha is the next group admin. So I've added the Diana. I've added Diana. Alicia, I'm hearing you, but child, listen, we can do this one at a time, okay? So anybody that wants to be in the chat, just put your number there, and during class, I will add you as we go. Yes?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Come on, people, let's talk about the wire transfers regulation, the EU one and the Bahamas one.
So the regulation actually is broken down into, I think 4 parts. And it has headings where it talks about what information is required, the duty to identify and verify the identity of, I guess, persons, the beneficiary of the wires. So the regulation really speaks to what is required when sending wires, and what banks and other financial institutions must look for when they're doing wire transfers.
I also see it talks about retention of records.
Yes, what is that's the Bahamian one. What does the EU one talk about? And they also have a revised regulation as it relates to the EU one. Alicia, I sent you a link.
Thank you, I got it.
Jada, what's your last name?
I just added it's Alicia Butler. I know it says Jada to the top.
Okay, so let me go back and go back in the chat. Is nobody has anything else to say about the EU wire transfer regulations and the revised regulation? Come on, people, y'all should have read.
Speaks to sanctions and monitoring as well, and also data protection.
What does the Bahamas one talk about? I think, David, you were the one who told us about it. Do you know? Are you familiar with it?
I'm not familiar with it. I'll take a quick glance at it and see what it says.
Thank you. Help out your classmates, because they look like they read the book, but they won't say that.
Just give me a few minutes. Just quickly.
That's fine. No pressure. Okay, so it's 7:26. I've been talking for an hour and a half. We're halfway through class tonight. So let's take a 10-minute break. We are going to stretch your legs, get some water, use the restroom. In the meantime, I will try and add everybody. And David, when we come back, he will tell us about the Bahamas version of the wire transfer regulation. Yes?
Yes.
10 minutes break. Alicia Butler, I added you to the chat.
Thank you.
You're welcome. For those of you who are not moving during this 10-minute break, please take this time to look at the rest of the chapter so we can have a lively and provocative discussion for the next half. Thank you all. And we're back. Is everybody back?
Yep.
Okay. Before we move on, Shul, I think. I see your hand up. Are you
Yes.
okay?
Yes, all good. I just wanted to contribute to the conversation a little bit about wire transfers in Europe.
Okay, go ahead.
So I wanted to just share with you guys. I'm not sure if it's related to the course at all, just like maybe it'll help.
We're all as a show. Tell us about it.
So bank transfers in Europe has a name actually. It's called SEPA, so SEPA, and they have three like distinct services, but I just want to talk about two of them. The first one is called Sepa Credit Transfer, and the other one is called Sepa Instant Credit Transfer. So basically, the instant credit transfer, you basically receive the amount in seconds, and the credit transfer is basically like a normal wire transfer. The interesting thing is basically with the SEPA transfers, you'd be able to send from one country to another. Let's say you're sending money from Germany to France, you'd be able to do it like you're sending money within your country. So basically all countries in Europe is being considered as one. So you'd be able to send money quickly, in a very like a cheap and safe way. For you to be able to do that, SEPA has, I think, 36 member states. So basically, like most of the European Union is part of SEPA, and you basically need a bank account in your country. And while you're transferring your money, you would need an IBAN, like an international bank account number. And sometimes they're asking for business identifier code. Sorry?
It's known as BIC, right?
Yeah, it's BIC. It's BIC.
Continue.
Okay. So let's say you're transferring 500 euros and you're based in Germany. You'd be able to send your money, your friend money who's based out of France in seconds. The only thing I think that's worth mentioning is that if you're doing credit transfer, it takes around like a business day. But if you're doing instant, it takes like 10 seconds. So it's very easy to transfer wire money in Europe. That's it.
Thank you for that. It's almost like Zelle. You know the app Zelle in the US, where you could transfer money from one bank person to another. So that's what it sounds like to me. But because I guess Europe is that block, yeah. So thanks so much for that. I wasn't aware of that. I thought that you had to use, certain apps and things of that nature. So thank you so much for that contribution. Appreciate it.
Ms. Sands, I was just going to say that it sounded exactly like Zelle. But is there a limitation in terms of the amount of money you can send? Because I know with Zelle, it's only so much you can send on a daily basis. Ms. Sands, do you know how much it is? I think it's like $1,500.
Sorry. If I'm not wrong, for credit transfers, it's basically you can do up to like €1 billion, like 1 billion euros. You'd be able to transfer with credit transfer. This is not instant, so it takes like one business day. But if you're gonna do instant, like an instant credit transfer, I think you're allowed to send up to like 100,000 euros at a time.
Wow, okay. Yeah, I think Zelle is like $1,500.
I think Zelle is 15, but I think, to be honest, David, it could also be what your limits are. Because certain banks would give you a certain limit that's different from another bank. You understand what I'm saying? Because like even here in RBC, I have a very low limit because I don't really bank with them per se. But then with my CIBC account, my limit is higher. Even though it's a limit, my daily limit is higher, much higher than my RBC daily limit.
Okay, I thought it was standard across the board. I thought it was a 2,500 in terms of transfers across the board for all banks in the Bahamas, but I guess it depends on the type of account you have.
I only have savings account, and I can tell you for CIBC, it's definitely not 2,500. I can do way more than that. It depends on the limit the bank gives you. And I know at RBC, if I want to do something more than my daily limit, which is probably the 2,500, I can call them and ask them to open it up and tell them what I'm doing and why I want to do it, and then they'll allow it to go through.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant without getting the approval, because that's the frustrating bit, because I've had many transactions where I have to do, and it's over 2,500, and then you gotta call the bank, and then they gotta speak to upper management, and then they'll do it on a one-time basis, and then it's just very annoying. So, but
CIBC doesn't give me that issue at all, and I do lots of transfers because my kids live in different places, and we all have bank accounts at CIBC for the very same reason. I can transfer to them a very high daily limit if I need to.
You can do up to 20,000 daily with CIBC.
The transfers only.
With RBC, it's 1,500 for your ATM usage, but wire transfer or domestic transfer, you can do up to 50,000 per day without having any issues. You shouldn't have any issues online.
Not RBC, buddy. Days decline, stuff easy.
Yeah, I think you could transfer up to 10.
Up to $50,000 per day with no issue. So it's probably a restriction on the account, but they should be able to transfer online $50,000 with no issues.
Internationally?
Have a chip card yet. That's what I like.
No, not internationally.
International
You can do international wire transfers as well. You shouldn't have an issue because Central Bank is still going to ask you for the documents, because there's a link that's attached to the online platform for you to submit the documents. That shouldn't be a problem. Now, when it comes to when you're traveling and you swiping your card, and if you're using the ATM, that's 1,500. But the online platform allows a little bit more freedom, because that's the reason for it.
I must have the issue then. See, I don't really bank with RBC per se, so yeah, I have a very low limit, and it's fine by me because they're not my favorite institution anyway.
I know.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, but RBC, I mean CIBC, for me, David, is very easy to use and transfer. But with a $20,000 limit daily, you can do a lot more with that.
yeah, less headache. I may have to consider that.
Yeah. Okay, so David, you could let us know what you found with the wire.
Yeah, so I just wanted to quickly go over this, I guess, the salient points. Originating financial institution, which is defined as a financial institution that initiates a wire transfer on behalf of a payer, is required to verify the payer's identity. And so some of the information, so they said that anytime there's a wire that is $1,000 or more, the wire transfer, I guess what needs to accompany that transfer is the payer's name, account number, address, or date and place of birth of the payer's national identity number or customer identification number. And then it also requires information with respect to the payees, the name, an account number as well. Retention of records. So the original financial institution is required to keep up to 5 years a record of the information on the payer and the payee, for any, I guess, who are subject to the wire transfer information, wire transfer. Yeah, the moral of the story is you need to have information. You need to verify the payers and the payee before you carry out these transactions, and that's some of the information that is needed. Yeah, I can send this in the group if need be.
Thank you. Yes, please put that in the group for everybody. Appreciate that, David. Yes, so exactly what he said. The moral of the story is there's lots of information that you need. A lot of you didn't think about the date of birth, right? But see, they probably won't ask you for that because they have your ID, or they'll ask you for your ID so they can get it, so they don't have to specifically ask you for it. Yes?
Banks don't usually send wires no more if you don't have an account, and all that information be onboarded from inception, right?
Right, and that's what I'm saying. They don't necessarily have to ask you for it because they already have it on file.
Before they used to send wire, I don't know how they used to do it before. Have it ever been a time where they used to send wires without you having an account with the institution?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So now that's so because of this laundering and so forth, that's why they make it.
Well, you remember now, before time, you could do a lot of things with institutions that you didn't have an account with. These days, they don't even want to cash a check for you if you don't bank with them.
Yeah, they don't. Because I was trying to wonder, like, how do they keep track of the wire?
CB doesn't. We don't cash checks if you don't bank with us.
I don't think no banks over here does it now.
No, they don't. What they tell you to do is deposit the check. Your bank will probably hold it for 2 days, and then you will have access to the money. Now, certain banks would do it for you if it's under a certain amount of money, and if you carry on bad, because they would do it as a favor to their client. But generally speaking, they don't do it. Carlene, let me see if I can mute Carlene. Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
No worries. So, right, in that case, they would they would do it, but it's rare. So you just have to deposit it. For me, it doesn't leave a good taste in the mouths of your clients, because if you are offering a checking account and your clients cannot cash the check, what's the point of having the account? You should not offer a product to a client if you're not going to fulfill the obligation that comes along with that product. So why am I writing checks that can't be cashed? Why does every check I write have to be deposited? That's ludicrous to me.
Now, I think in their defense, I know like other banks check, like if it's your bank check, you can verify the signatures immediately. But if it's not and you could verify you can verify if the funds is on the account for the person who wrote the check. So if you wrote a check, I can pull up your account and I'll be able to verify that, hey, Ms. Sands wrote a check. She has the funds available. Let me put the funds on hold and I could release the funds now to the person in front of me. Whereas if it's a check coming from RBC, we don't know who that client is. So they have to do a back end process. That's why they put the check on hold for about 2 days and put the funds on your account, but put the check on hold in the event that, hey, that check bounced back, the bank won't suffer a loss within that 2-day span.
And that's fine, Mr. Brown. But think about if your client, if I come to RBC as an example, right, with an RBC client's check, right, I'm standing in the front of you. You can see the signatures, you can match the signatures, you know if that client has monies on their account, but because I don't bank with you, you refuse to cash the check. Please explain that to me. Make that make sense.
And in that case, I think it's just I think it's just the banks in the Bahamas, they just deciding like, all right, we're gonna be selfish. So like some banks started, I don't know if it was RBC, but some
cash them, so they're looking for fees.
Yeah, some banks used to charge you like, all right, I can take $5 off your check, and then you can carry the rest of your bank. But now they saying no. If you want to cash this check, cheapest you open an account with us today, and you could always deposit your checks to our account. And
but it makes no sense because you're going to have an account with minimal balance, and all you're going to do is charge, in the words of the Prime Minister of Barbados, charge the poor people them money.
And I think I don't
ask a question. Let's say you have a checking account, right? And Bahamians have a habit of writing blank checks, signing blank checks, right? Let's say you have a checkbook in your drawer and you have an account with RBC. I don't have an account with RBC, and I found these checks in your drawer, blank check. And I go ahead and I write a check to myself and I walk up to RBC and I cash the check. How would you know who's the one who got the money from your account?
Let me tell you something. The minute you step in the bank, you are on camera.
Yeah, that's where the investigation come in. That's an
the
easy
first thing. That's the first thing. The second thing
So that is a way the bank protect themselves from going through all of that, because we don't have KYC on the client who's coming to cash that check.
No, trust me, that is a poor excuse, because you are going to get an identification from me, and you're going to get 2 identifications. I don't mind using 2 identifications to cash a check for a bank that I don't bank at. But when you're telling me that I cannot bring to you one of your customers' checks, that makes no sense. No matter how you put it, Rosalind, it don't make no sense.
Okay.
Because if the check is stolen, if the checkbook is stolen, there are ways for the bank to find out. It's just like if something happens online and the bank still have to do an investigation.
Exactly.
And what if you don't want to wait around for the investigation to be done and you want your money?
It's not, if
you want
you
money to
want to
wait.
wait around or not, you're going to have to wait, because we know that there's a process. But in reality, what about customer service? What are you there for? What is the person paying checking account fees for if they cannot have a check cashed?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's why people would go to the bank itself where the check was made from to cash it. So if you give me a Royal Bank check and I bank with CIBC, I wouldn't deposit it to my CIBC account because I know it's going to take longer. I want to go to Royal Bank to cash that check to get my money right away. So how can you tell me now that because I don't have an account with RBC, I can't cash the check?
They do it all the time. And I've gone into banks and I'm like, y'all ain't making no sense. I refuse to open up a bank account to cash a check that I don't bank here. I don't want to bank here. I don't want to be a client. I only trying to get my money. Okay. So if any one of y'all, let me write this disclaimer right now. Ever walk in the bank and hear me count on bar, just walk straight past. Just say hi and just walk straight past. Because that is a pet peeve of mine. Because for me, this is why you have mitigant factors in place. What can be a possible risk that you cannot mitigate from cashing a check? Stop offering the service.
I think they just really do it to over-secure themselves.
That you're not in the business of over-securing yourself. You're in the business of offering a service to your clients. That's the wrong business.
Then the account holder should close their account.
And
well, I mean, people like me ain't open up an account with certain institutions anyway. But
So just close the account.
if you think about people that get paid weekly, right? Landscapers and people that work with their hands. So you mean to tell me they have to open up an account to deposit a check for them to take off all the money anyway, and then the bank will charge them to deposit the check, and the bank will charge them when the account go overdrawn? That doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't make sense. And they don't care because we don't make enough noise about it.
I think we make noise. I just don't think we follow through.
We being the consumer, you mean, right?
Yes.
Well,
but for those persons who are working with their hands and being paid weekly, like you said, they will open up the account to cash their weekly check, so they won't be getting the additional charges to cash your check.
So, okay, so if you get paid weekly, right? If you cash in the check, let's just say the bank decides they can charge you $5 to cash the check. You could always tell your employer that $5 they need to add on to your salary. You shouldn't have to bear the cost of that, right? That's just one thing. The other thing is,
will they be charged the $5 if they have the account, if they're a customer of CIBC Bank?
No, they won't be charged, but I'm saying most persons in that category, they don't keep money in the bank based on central bank's records, right? They don't have no money in the bank. They ain't leaving no money in the bank. They can't afford to leave any money in the bank. So I'm depositing my 100 and whatever, no, that's 215, whatever the minimum wage is, right? I'm depositing my $215 check and I am leaving $5 to keep the account open. And at the end of the month, the bank will take the $5 anyway.
Please.
No, not if the account is open for salary purposes. There are different types of accounts that you can open. There are some accounts that require you to leave a minimum balance, and there are some where they know that they're being open for salary purposes, that you will not assess the highest service charges as the others. You may get probably a 20 cents or a dollar something service charge, but not the full amount.
Ebony, I have
Yes, ma'am.
3 bank accounts and all 3 I have opened for salary purposes and they
But
all
you
get
rich.
charged.
You rich. So they look at you and they say you rich. You can afford it.
No,
But,
no, no,
but
no,
being,
no,
but
no,
being,
no.
but being a
I'm sorry, I'm
devil
just
advocate,
kidding.
Miss
I'm just
Sands,
kidding.
why would someone want to have a job and getting salary every week and don't have a bank account? Why not have a bank account?
Because you have to
Regardless
understand
of the fee,
I don't
regardless of the fees.
Many persons don't have bank accounts.
everybody is not interested in having a bank account. It is expensive, number one.
And a lot
They
of people can't afford. A lot of people.
They charge you to deposit, they charge you to withdraw, they charge you for everything you do and you get 0 interest. Make that make sense to me?
Exactly. They don't want to offer you any interest, but they want to charge you all the fees in the world. Ridiculous.
To use
So,
the ATM,
so
they
does it
charge
make
you.
sense to just have a safe in your house and leave your money there?
I mean, in this climate, I wouldn't suggest that, but I'm just saying, when you think about banks and the banking system is supposed to be here as a conduit. They are not supposed to be as an institution that rides on their customers' back. Let's be honest, right? So all of the regulation that's in place, the banks are safeguarding themselves, but they are not, from my experience, concerned with the financial well-being and inclusion of their customers. Think about it. That's one of the United Nations goals, right? For everybody to be able to participate in the banking or financial system, because other than that, you push them on the ground, right? So at the end of the day, if you can't afford it and you're forcing me to do it, I'm going to pay either way. But trust me, let me take out all my money now while I need it this week, and next week when I come back to cash my check, if the account overdrawn, then I can worry about that next week. A lot of Bahamians are living week to week, month to month. So you have to think about everybody. You just can't think about those of us that can afford it. I'd be upset when I see how much fees on my, and I'm like, but you only giving me no interest though.
But I'm curious to know, why is it allowed though? Because all banks do it. Whether it's Canadian bank and it's local banks, all of them does it. So why is it allowed?
I think now that the central bank has an ombudsman in place, we're going to see some changes. So I think we can look forward in the future to some changes, because that is a cry that Bahamians have been having for the last, in my experience, the last 2 decades, but even worse in the last 5 years. But there was nobody to hold them accountable, right? So if you have an ombudsman and you could go have a place where you can make your formal complaints and the banks have to hear you, then I think it's going to make it even better. And then we have crypto and we have a lot of technology that is going to force them to change their ways. Don't worry, the time will come when we could do stuff without them. I mean, we could do it now, but we could do stuff without them. And if you think about it, they're fighting very hard to try and hold on to what they think should be their place in the market. But if they keep up with what people consider to be greed on their behalf, they're going to be left behind. Because a lot of times you don't need to go to a bank to transfer money these days. You could do pair to pair.
Very true.
Okay, we went off topic, but that was a very interesting conversation. Let's move on to the IMF. That's section 4 of this unit. We know what the IMF is, but let's have a conversation around what it is that they do, what they bring to countries, and what's their actual purpose. I know most of us have a negative connotation, but let's see what the book says about them. Anybody want to lead that conversation?
IMF, okay. I didn't get to read that too much.
The IMF would be, it's a group that also look at efficiencies, am I correct? Efficiencies within the country. and offer suggestions or ways to improve. Am I correct, Ms. Sapp?
Yeah, I would say so, but you got to be a little bit more in depth than that. What else? What else about them?
Wasn't this the group that back 2018, I think, when they told us that our disaster relief plan was not up to par, especially with the fact that we did not have, I forgot the type of insurance, because the government at the time felt it was or the previous government felt it wasn't necessary because the chance of us having a large storm but a lot of flooding and whatever was not going to happen, so they didn't do this particular coverage.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Ebony, I'm going to be politically correct. Ma'am, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to leave that right there, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. So I don't know that.
Saying you wrong. I just saying I leaving it right there. Anybody else? What is the IMF known for? What is the IMF synonymous with?
They're known for the
country.
For lending money.
yeah, rating you. Their aim is in reducing global poverty, I guess encouraging international trade, promoting financial stability and economic growth. And I would think their functions, or if I can remember, is overseeing economic development, lending.
Evaluating the money.
Cool. But what else they known for, especially in the Caribbean?
For the people on IMF program.
For the doing assessment.
And what does that mean, Sam? What does that mean?
Usually means a lot of austerity measures,
Yeah.
cutting service, and all that kind of stuff.
No. What kind of stuff, man? Y'all ain't saying the key word I want to hear.
Are you referring to trade?
Funding.
No, it's another word. I think somebody said it earlier today.
Making people
The
increase the
bailouts?
taxes.
Are they bailing out countries?
Yeah, they are, but it's okay. Let me just tell y'all the word. Y'all don't be thinking about the valuation of currency.
I said that.
Yeah.
I didn't hear you, Mr. Brown. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Isn't that what when you think about the IMF and I mean, forget about all the fantastic work that they do. When you think about them, isn't that the first thing comes to mind?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or am I the only one that thinks that way?
That's the first thing come to mind. Wasn't it something with Jamaica as well?
Yep.
Yeah.
Big
That's-
thing.
that's-
Yeah, that was.
That's
Big
what I
thing.
remember.
They
And Barbados.
And Barbados.
they
Right, so when you
also
go ahead, Adama. Sorry.
don't they also when they help you to implement the austerity measure, when they come in, it also helps you with structural adjustments and how you are going to
Pay them back.
how you're going to globally in your country, how you going to I want to say, I don't want to say spend your money, but which programs you are going to continue with, and which programs you're going to have to readjust in terms of your economic programs, your outcomes and your output. Isn't that
You
what they
said it
do?
right, Adama. Spend your money.
Yeah. They tell you how to, in other words, simply, they tell you how to spend your money. That is correct. I was trying to be polite.
Yeah.
But that's what they
But
do.
We get it. We understand exactly. That is exactly what happens when they have to
They
come
tell
in and
you how
help
to
you.
spend your money.
They tell you what is necessary for you to do to get back
On
into
track.
alignment with where you should be as a country. Yes. So out of that, we also talked about the AML CFT assessments. Countries do them, institutions do them, regulators ensure that you do them. Those assessments also help the IMF, right? Because when you think about what you're spending, if they're coming in, they need to know what you're spending the money on to begin with, why you had to call them, yes? Because all of those things they're going to need to know to be able to help you put in austerity measures. So you have to ensure that all of the assessments, your AML and CFT assessments have been done, or they will ensure that it's done for you before they are able to help you, because they need to know where you're at as a country as it relates to AML, CFT matters. Because you can't be getting help from the IMF and you still have a whole back door to plug. Yes?
Yes.
The austerity measures will not work. So we're going to move to the UN and some of their initiatives. Now, most of us should be familiar with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Are we all familiar with that? Have we heard about that? Even if you're non-financial services, this is something they have reports all the time. Are we all familiar with the UN ODC?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, cool. So you all should know what it does, right? And I'm sure you all have heard about their reports because they release them frequently enough for you to be familiar with those reports. No, yes, nobody knows what they do?
Yes, ma'am.
It's right in the book. Somebody tell me what it is that they do.
It is they assist their UN member states in smuggling against illicit drugs, crime, and terrorism.
You said smuggling, Rashida. What do you mean? You don't mean smuggling?
Sorry, struggle. There's struggle.
Yeah. Right. What else does the UNODC does?
I could just read it for you.
Develop policy.
No, we're reading. I want you to read. I want you to have read it and digest it so you can tell it back to us.
Right. So essentially, by releasing their papers, it's a way to help their UN countries assist themselves as well with tackling their struggle against illicit drugs, crime, and terrorism. So, like through research, implementing treaties, drafting domestic legislation, things like that.
And ma'am, you answered so well, and you want to read to us? You see how easy that was? Remember now, you was a lawyer, you all could talk.
Right, and so we could read and then say it right back to you like we're reading.
Agreed, but guess what? I would prefer you do that because I know what you're saying aligns with the book. However, it's not worded specifically like the book, and so it's easier to digest. Agreed?
The key.
Agreed.
They provide technical assistance, don't they?
Yes.
Don't they provide a lot of technical assistance to countries so they can do these things? They do if you need it, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
They do if it's necessary, yes, ma'am. They do if it's necessary. Every attorney should know what they're about. Now, all of y'all bar or just been to law school to get the degree, y'all should be leading this conversation. The United Nations Conventions. Let's go, Rashida, start this off for us because you didn't read it, so you could digest it and tell us back. Tell it just as nice as the last time.
What you mean, like the conventions?
Yeah, tell us what they wrote. And then I can pick on what's she name? Let me see. She come on tonight. Right. Rodrigo, you next, so prepare. And then David, because you've been talking a lot tonight, I can put you like third or fourth, okay? But this is the lawyer's question. Don't feel bad, Adelma. You in this too. Tell
I don't know about that convention.
Okay, so while Rashada talking, go look it up. It's on page 54. Rodrigo, I hope you're looking on page 54. David, I know you're looking on page 54 because you're a smart young man. You've been helping us all night. Sam, don't think I forget about you. And you's working in the regulator office. Come on, let's talk about this. We ain't trying to read this out the book. We're gonna be finished with this in 3 minutes. Let's go.
Right. So the United Nations conventions, they deal with pretty much developing legislation with regards to the deals with money laundering, terrorist financing. Some of the things that they assist with is they provide some direction for countries who struggle again with matters such as extradition, mutual legal assistance, transfer proceeds, and joint investigation. So what they do is they don't only just spit the legislation out and say this is what you do. They try to work with the countries and find out tell us what you're struggling with, and then we will tell you how to combat that particular situation, because every country really isn't the same, or every country has different struggles.
Great, thank you. Rodrigo, let's go.
I understand United Nations conventions to be an agreement or some form of treaty between countries, international countries, where they all conform to the same standards or the same procedures relative to anything really, because the conventions can be relative to human rights. It could be relative to their attempts or their methods in ridding or attempting to limit trafficking and narcotics. It could be against corruption. It could be against organized crimes. It could be for the protection of human rights. So I am of the opinion that the convention in general is just a all-around document or publication by the United Nations in an attempt to protect persons that are a part of the treaty or persons that are member states. Protect them in one way or the other, so against the struggle or in any form.
Okay, thanks. Now, I can't remember the other lawyers, Sam and David. You all talked tonight, so I let someone else go, but then, you know, if they leave anything, y'all prepare.
Conventions I think my learned friends have done a great job of explaining the conventions. I have nothing to add.
Conventions. Can I say something? Conventions are developed because there are common problems across borders. And if there's a common across the borders, then they usually meet to develop whatever aspects that would assist in controlling these problems within the countries. And so when you meet to develop them, you look at the commonalities, and that's how you get these conventions developed. They are usually common problems that are common across borders.
Thank you so much, Adelma. I agree. I totally agree. Now, David, back to you. Let me tell you something, David. Let me just let you know something now. For the record, I have an attorney in my family. My daughter is an attorney as well. So that learned friends thing that you try to pull just now, I can let you get up with that tonight because you've been really helpful tonight. But next week, don't try it at 8 times. Sam, Mr. Campbell, I need you to add to this conversation. Pardon? What did you say, David?
I said duly noted.
Thank you very kindly, sir. Sam, there is something that none of your learned friends mentioned that I want you to mention, hopefully, about the conventions, and then we can move on. And Sam, you can also lead us in the answers conversation as you are a part of the team that manages that process in the country. Hello, Mr. Campbell, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. I don't see what it is that they left out.
Organized crime, Mr. Campbell. Organized crime.
Oh.
Yeah, your learned friends didn't touch that. But I just give that one
sure?
to you because it was helpful tonight too. Look, they didn't. Trust me, I listened intently with both of my ears.
Oh,
So
maybe because I was reading that as they were talking. Sorry. Okay.
yeah, you was reading it. You didn't say it though. You was reading it. So let's move to the answers. Tell us how the answers work. Are you familiar with the answers? You know what I'm talking about, Sam?
The answers?
Mhm.
Not in practice.
And you working in the office of the people who is okay. So
I just joined there, you know. Yeah.
I let you slide like so, and I tell you, hey, Sam, you fall into two categories: attorney and regulator. You could get it. Remember? Okay. Does anybody know anything about the UN conventions and security control resolutions against terrorism? Sam, I let you slide today. You was very helpful last week. You putting up things in the WhatsApp chat. So you can slide tonight, eh?
Much obliged.
Anybody knows about them? Anybody in practice? Anyone who works in a financial institution or a law firm? Anybody that's regulated by Compliance Commission, Securities Commission, Central Bank, you should know about the answers. Answers is just a short abbreviation for the UN conventions and Security Council resolutions.
You talking about the sanctions?
Yes, ma'am. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, sanctions, yes.
I ain't gonna say sanctions, I can say answers because that's the regime it comes under.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So tell us about it.
Oh God.
Well, you know, if you talk, I can call you.
Yeah. Well, I think what subsequent to 2018, all licensees in the financial services, or definitely regulators, had to ensure that they inform their licensees that they would be advising them of persons listed or persons who the United Nations put on their sanction lists, and they would inform them regularly, and it would be and then there's a process whereby licensees are to look at their databases and look for those certain names or entities who are involved with particular. I seem to see a lot of persons under the Al Qaeda regime, terrorists, and then they have to report back to the regulator.
Correct.
Sort of kind
So for
of.
all those who don't know what Stein just said, there is
Stan.
now a regime.
Stan.
Stan? Okay, Stan.
Pen.
Okay, like handstand. Okay, thanks, Stan. I keep
You're
that in my
welcome.
head. Okay, so Stan said, in 2018, the Bahamas implemented this. Remember, we was on the list at that point as well. We implemented this to ensure that we have not only a robust terrorism sanctions regime in place, but also one that is the same across the board. Because before that, every organization pretty much did their own thing as it relates to scrubbing their client database. They use for the most part the OFAC sanctions list, but there are lots of other sanctions lists that were out there, and there was not a standard in place in the Bahamas. And so this is the standard that is now used. So every regulated entity uses the same exact standard. You have to report to your regulator quarterly at the end of the year, or if they send out a circular saying or advising that these persons have been added, check your database, or every quarter you go and you send it to them to say you've searched, you've checked your database, and you don't have any person that's on the terrorist, the UN terrorist listing, and you're cleared. You have to make sure that the FIU gets it along with your regulator. Okay, and so now we move on to the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision. Some people say Basel, some people say Basel. I say Basel because I was Bahamian and ICA in the word. So anybody that works in retail, that works in lending, should be familiar with the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision. Yes? Are my bankers familiar with this?
Yes.
Great. So you can explain it to them. For those who don't know, Felicia. Is it Felicia or Felicia? Let me pronounce person's name correctly.
Alicia.
Okay, Felicia. So explain it to those who don't work in banking. Bring them up to speed on what the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision does and has done in the past.
Well, I don't work too closely with Basel, but I do deal with the Basel Index. Pretty much that would give you a listing of the countries and their risk ratings. So that's the only thing I deal with when it comes to Basel.
Anybody else deals with Basel? And we have any lenders? Anybody in credit?
I know it's a supervisory.
Formally.
Yeah, and they work along with the Bank of International Settlement. They compile a list of guidelines to help combat AML and CFT, the risk management, I should say. They have like a few, how would I say it? Yeah, they have like a few guidelines that we should follow. Like comprehensive, the bank must be comprehensive of the risk assessments. Our board of directors should oversee like policies and procedures, especially with the first line of defense. We should establish that the first line of defense somewhat deals with the risk first and should have policies and procedures in place for them to have a full understanding of that and so forth.
Right. So it's made up of what? Who is the committee made up of? You're right, Mr. Brown. Who is the committee made up of?
Different banks, authorities, banks.
Central banks.
Yeah, central bank authority.
Yeah, so they're made up of representatives from the central banks of different countries. Yeah, and so they set policies which are minimum standards. Yeah, for AML, CFT, risk management generally. So when you talk about credit risk and liquidity risk, those are things that come out of the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision. They have lots of pillars. Basel has pillars. We're not going to delve into all of that, but if you do a risk management course, you will go deeper into Basel and all of the pillars and how they manage risks in various entities around the world. So we're going to move on to the OECD. Have everybody heard that terminology, that acronym, OECD?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So what does the OECD do? And what are they known for? That's simple. That's only that's a two-part question.
Putting the noose around your neck.
Man, Stan,
Hey, go on.
somebody else. Not over but Stan description tonight. Not that one. Pardon? Somebody was speaking. Who said something outside of Stan just now?
They're known for coming to countries' aids, for I guess providing information.
The only thing I knew about them was when I was in college, they said that the OECD had blacklisted us for tax evasion. So that's the only thing I knew about them.
Alicia, I can put you in the same category with Stan tonight.
Which category is that?
The category where we're being politically correct tonight. However, you are correct in what you heard when you were in college. But they're known for other things, man. Come on, let's go. They act as a forum for researching, developing, and refining economic and social policies on a range of issues. Yes?
Yes.
They are the ones that speak to money laundering and harmful tax practices. This is what I wanted one of you to say.
I said that.
Yeah, you
So
did.
many words. Oh, okay.
You did, but I mean, like, there's 30 some of us on this thing, so I wanted more than just one person to say that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when we talk about all the tax initiatives, the global tax initiatives, that's what comes to mind, yes? Does anybody know of any global tax initiative that the Bahamas is currently, is part of our framework? Come on, people. I'm sure somebody knows this.
Could you repeat that question, please?
Any
CRS?
Yes, the tax initiative, global tax initiative. But CRS is a US one. Let's use another one.
We are part of the minimum
BBC.
corporate tax for countries valued over 650 million euros. So we want to tax on 15%. Sign up for that last year.
Keep going, Sam. Sam, you should know some things about these. You've been in that space.
Yeah, so
I think
that's
it's the report.
what more you want me to say on that, sorry?
Not just that one. There are other initiatives.
BEPS?
Yes. Now explain what BEPS is. And I know you know some.
Base erosion stuff, base erosion, some
Profit shifting.
profit shifting, yes.
Tell us what that means.
I can't explain that offhand, not gonna lie.
What?
It's been so long since I deal with BEPS directly. A lot of these
Tell us
academic
the
stuff is
basics.
just,
I know you know for a fact because I've had to deal with you in private practice, so I know you know.
yeah, how long ago that was?
Yeah, Sam died even like 4 years, man. Come on, man. You know how much things I have in my brain from way longer than that?
Yeah, I just keep relevant things in my brain, sorry.
Oh, Father. Okay, so does anybody other than Sam, any of our learned colleagues, know anything about the BEPS initiative or any other person?
Do we look at strategies? I guess I don't know. Tax
Well,
strategies.
Google says it is strategies to shift profits from higher tax jurisdictions to lower tax jurisdictions.
And how does that relate to the Bahamas, Deanna?
No idea, to be honest.
Okay, does anybody know how that, what she Googled, relates to the Bahamas? Because we are actually working in a BEPS regime. That's a part of our framework.
Is it the introduction of taxes? Because I know taxation in the Bahamas has been a bit of an issue.
It's essentially it kind of stops multinational or big companies from incorporating here or headquartering here and avoiding the corporate or income taxes from their countries.
Sam, I know it would come back. See that? I had confidence in you, it would come back. So essentially, like Sam said, you know, I don't know if you guys know, but a lot of major global companies, they're headquartered in countries where either no tax or very low tax regimes. And so what is happening is this initiative is trying to ensure that you're going to pay your fair share amount of taxes where you do business as well as where you're headquartered. Because a lot of times when you think about the big companies, Apple and other companies, right? They're not headquartered in the US. They're headquartered in other jurisdictions, right? And then they're able to benefit, I would say, from being headquartered in that jurisdiction, and then they just shift the profits around. And so that's what that initiative is all about. It's a very interesting initiative, and I would recommend that you go and read up about it, because you will see where we're moving in the future as it relates to tax and taxation in this country. Because the tax regime is coming, just so you know. Don't think we're going to be in a country and not taxed, even though we pay taxes, direct taxes. a very, we don't do like salary deductions and stuff for taxes, but believe me, that is where all countries are headed, because you have to be able to support your income as a country, right? The taxes that we currently take in the Bahamas, even though as Bahamians we will say it's significant, it's still not sufficient, and it's not on a rate where everybody is paying their equal share. Yes? So in your mind, start to prepare to think that there is coming a day when a government of the Bahamas will have to introduce tax measures. And I'm talking about direct tax measures.
What's the
Okay,
initiative called? What's the initiative called?
It's BEPS.
BEPS?
Yeah. Base erosion profit shifting. Stan, you want to say something? I see your hand up.
I have a question. Is this the same act or regulation? I'm not sure. That has to do with what's it called? Substantive.
Physical presence.
Sorry?
Physical presence.
Yes.
It's all related.
It's all related. Okay, gotcha.
So there's one called CESRA, right?
Oh,
There's
that's it.
CESRA, there's BEPS, there's FATCA, there's CRS. There are a number of initiatives. Some of them are global and some of them are US centric, but you can go and read them up. They're all pretty much, they fall in the tax category. Yeah? Okay, so the Egmont Group of Financial Intelligence Units, that the name alone says exactly what it is. Yes? And the FIU in the Bahamas is a part of that group. It's just a group of financial intelligence units. They meet, they sit, they discuss, they look at trends, and then they come back and they inform regulators, they inform government about what they're seeing happening, because those are the institutions that collect STRs and SARs around the world. Stan, you want to say something?
Sorry, I did an error. I'm sorry.
NGOs, non-governmental organizations. These are organizations that really, they're not here to make money, but they're kind of here to set policy and set standards. And so when you look at an NGO that operates in the financial services sector and the sphere, the Wolfsburg Group comes to mind. And the Wolfsburg Group is a grouping of 13 banks. They come together and they sit around a table, and they too, they don't set rules, but they set policies. And if you know anything about transacting from bank to bank cross-border, a lot of times you will get something that's called the Wolfsburg Aml Questionnaire. And that's just one bank. That's a way for one bank to determine from another bank if they have all of the AML regime in place. How robust is their risk management policies and procedures and all of those things in place. So if you work in compliance, you may or may not, but at some point you may come across a Wolfsburg questionnaire. And that's just, they're an NGO. They're banks that come together. I'm almost like backhoe, like an association, but it's all for the benefit of the financial services industry. They talk about policies. They make policies and procedures, and a lot of it deals with AML CFT. Principles is the word I should be using. They write principles, and it governs like the banking sector. They do publications as well. You can go on their website and you could read their publications. Is anybody familiar with Transparency International?
No, not really.
Anyone else? Any of my learned colleagues?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not.
Anyone else?
I'm not.
Okay.
Do it have something to do with being transparent when dealing with like government officials and so forth?
Yes and no. It has something to do with a perception index as it relates to corruption.
Yeah, of that nature.
Yeah, that's where you're trying to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it has to do with. Transparency International is an organization. They rate countries based on the corruption perception. It don't have to be true. However, it's an index. And a lot of financial institutions, when they are onboarding and during the life cycle of an account, they go to Transparency International Index, and they use their index as a way to help them risk rate their clients based on where the client is coming from. I'm talking about geographical, or where the client's monies are coming from, or the source of funds. So that's just another tool that is used to help financial institutions with in their risk rating process. It also speaks a lot to what the world sees your country as. So, you know, in the Bahamas, we talk all the time about how people just do what they want to do, and we talk about corruption, we talk about the levels of corruption. What you need to do tonight or tomorrow, go online and see where the Bahamas lies on this list. Okay?
Okay.
That's your homework. I got y'all next week, and don't lie to me. Find out where the Bahamas is on the Transparency International Index. You should be aware of where it is.
Find out.
So there, obviously, if you're going to have a perception of being corrupt, that then in turn leads to the perception that, hey, if you're corrupt, that means money laundering happening somewhere, or some type of financial crime happening somewhere, be it fraud, be it stealing, something. Yes? Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah.
I guess so.
Yes. There has to be an interface, because if you corrupt, I mean, and you corrupt in just your dealings, you ain't benefiting. If you think about it, you corrupt so you can benefit it. And usually the benefit is financial. Wouldn't you say so? Why be corrupt if you don't get nothing from it?
You said
that's just a perception, though.
Yeah, but okay. So even with the perception, if you and I say, "Ooh, that person is corrupt," right? Even if it's a perception, people's perception is their reality. So I'm not going to say that you're corrupt and not think that you have committed some type of crime. It don't have to be true, but it's going to be tied to something, because you have to be gaining. It only makes sense, right?
I hear you.
They don't do the investigation, right?
They look at their specific things that they look at in a country. And that's how if you go on Transparency International, they tell you how they rate the countries, what they use to come up with their ratings.
That's the four.
Pardon?
That's the 4 domains or something like that. The 4 domains that they use to rate the countries.
Yes.
That's what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
So there has to be an interface between corruption and money laundering. It make no sense you being corrupt and ain't gaining. And I mean, I guess I would think that you're not just doing it because the word corruption in and of itself speaks in a negative connotation, right? You're not being like an ethical hacker. Those are people that they do hacking to try and help, or what they consider to help the wider public. They're not benefiting from the hacking. If you corrupt, that means you would have done something untowards, correct? So there has to be an interface, right? Even if it's not money laundering, it's some type of financial crime. Wouldn't you say so, Ebony?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So the perception, whether it's true or not, still causes people to look at you sideways. Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Correct.
So even FATF plays a role as it relates to corruption. And how does FATF do that?
When they evaluate it, monitoring.
Yeah, but
When
how?
You mean the mutual evaluations?
No. We
You say
talk about, yeah, I say FATF.
You say, how do they know that you're corrupt or not?
No, I didn't say no. I say
How do they help manage?
Yes, how do they manage and support the fight against corruption?
That goes right back to the policies that they're putting in place to mitigate.
Which
Isn't
are
it looking
Their recommendations, isn't it in their recommendations?
Right.
Exactly. They use the 40 recommendations to support the fight against corruption. Because once those recommendations are implemented, right, they are all mitigating factors against financial crime for the most part, which leads to corruption. So that's how they're fighting it or supporting the fight against it. Yeah. You see how it's tied in?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So the FATF recommendation as it relates to PEPs, all of the things that we said earlier in the class, right? Those things are in place. So one, companies know who the PEPs are. Two, if you know who the PEPs are and they're being monitored and we have enhanced due diligence on them, the level of corruption is supposed to be less than if we didn't know who they were and who they were doing business with. Yes?
Yes.
So that's how that specific recommendation supports the fight against corruption, because when you think about it, corruption is usually tied to PEPs. Now, anybody can be corrupt, let's be honest. But when you think corruption and you think running a country, you think politically exposed persons. FATF also helps with the transparency of beneficial ownership, because now you need to know who your ultimate beneficial owner is, right? And you would know that if the 40 recommendations are implemented, correct?
Correct.
So there are anti-corruption conventions. The OECD has one. I don't know how familiar you are with the US one. The US one is very far-reaching and extraterritorial. Does anybody know what the name of the act or the law is?
Is it the Patriot? Was that the Patriot Act?
No, not that one.
No, not that one. I remember this from intermediate, but I can't remember the name.
It's another one that has come up before in the country. We've heard it before. We're on page 73. Let me give you all a hint.
U.S. Anti-Corruption Act.
Pardon?
Is it the U.S. Anti-Corruption Act?
No.
You mean the POCO?
No. Look to the top
Okay.
of page 73.
Foreign Corrupt Practices Act.
Correct. And then there's also the UK Bribery Act. Those two acts are extraterritorial, which means they reach outside of their country's borders. Yes?
Yes.
So if the US dollar is used in any corruption, any scandal outside of the US takes over that specific investigation. Because once you use the US dollar and you're a PEP or you're in some type of high seat of power, the FCPA kicks in because it deals with the corruption of foreign persons using the US dollar. And the UK is the same way. So their hands could reach in any country if you're using their currency. So remember a while back there was a case in the Bahamas and they were saying, okay, well, why are you sending the money to the US and then sending it back to the Bahamas? You're a PEP and so on and so forth. If somebody wanted to be facetious in that, they could say that, hey, we could elicit or solicit the US to kind of take over. It didn't happen that way, but it's quite possible. So you're not going to get away with bribing anybody using the US dollar. But let's put it like this, anybody of significance. And there are lots of case studies in the book that speaks to the violations of the FCSPA and the fines associated with doing that. Bribery is frowned upon from a UK's perspective and the US perspective. So hopefully we would have covered everything in Unit 2 and we would have covered the learning outcomes. So somebody read for me what the learning outcomes are and we could kind of just go over them before we end class tonight. So learning outcomes, page 77. Emily, you read for me? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. The learning outcomes. At the end of this unit, you should be able to describe the objectives and activities of international bodies combating money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism. You should be able to describe and explain the impact and importance of the FATF, IMF, EU, OECD, and UN initiatives designed to counter money laundering and terrorism financing, especially the FATF recommendations, EU regulations, and UN conventions. You should be able to appreciate the work of the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision and the Eggman Group in trying to counter the use of financial services industry for money laundering and terrorism financing. You should be able to explain the role of non-governmental organizations such as the Wolfsburg Group and Transparency International in combating financial crime and corruption. You should be able to appreciate the links between financial crime, money laundering, and corruption, and the various international efforts to combat all these forms of crime launched by the UN and the OECD, and the effects of the US FCPA and the UK Bribery Act.
Thank you so much, Emily. So based on that, I think we covered it all. What do you guys think?
I think so, comprehensive.
Is there anybody who does not think that the learning outcomes were achieved tonight? Don't all just answer at once. I mean, it's like 31 of us on this Zoom.
I'll speak for me personally. I feel as though the learning outcomes were achieved. You addressed them all as well as the other persons giving their input. Personally, though, I know I have some work to do.
Thank you, Ebony. That would mean that you'd have to read units 1, 2, and 3, because I'm going to tell you all now, we're on unit 2. We've just completed unit 2. And at the end of unit 3, when we're starting to go into unit 4, we're going to start looking at the questions. However, I am of the opinion that you should look at the questions tonight, not to answer them, but to see what the ask is. Yeah, when I say the ask, ASK, exactly what is the question going to require from you, the questions. Because I find that a lot of times, by the time we get around to looking at the questions as a class, you only get a couple more weeks to submit. And I'm going to tell you, like I've told all of my other classes in the past, a lot of times, you guys think, oh, I'm an attorney and I'm only picking on y'all, but it ain't only y'all, it's everybody. Oh, I can write a paper. I got this. But let me tell you something. I did this. I'm not just teaching this class. I earned my certification in 2006. Been a minute, but it does not seem to be difficult until you're writing the answers. And then you're not only governed by what you can say, you're governed by limited words. And most of you know, if you're going to write a good paper, you have to have a couple of drafts. Yes? So, Emily, thank you for that. I think that's where a lot of you are. And it's just based on the participation level. I can tell when you guys read and when you don't. So I'm going to tell you now. Take a few minutes tonight. The question, somebody put it inside the group for us. So thank you for whoever dropped the questions in the group. Take a few minutes, read the questions. If you come up with any questions of your own, drop it in the chat group and let's start looking at what is going to be required. You don't have much time to write a paper. All of my class, they usually say, oh, we could write the paper, or we could get it done. Assignment 1 is due Monday, March the 21st. Today is the 10th of February, which means you have roughly 6 weeks to answer a paper. For those of you who are not in financial services, it's not going to be very easy because a lot of the questions would pertain, or you tend to answer them from that perspective. I mean, you can choose whichever industry you want to, but it's always just easier based on how the questions are written. So please, even though I think we have covered the learning outcomes, I need you all to read. Read. We should be finished with units 1 and 2 already. Next week, we're going to move on to units 3. And even though that's not the time for us to discuss the questions yet, I want us to discuss the questions next week. So I'm going to carve out at least 15 minutes at the end of the class, because the questions always seem easy when you read it. But when you got to respond and respond in kind, and you have a limited amount of words to do that, it becomes very difficult. And if you know anything about writing for English markers, you know succinctness is your friend. So all of those persons who probably been to law school, you all should probably be able to handle this, but it ain't just about the words. It's about the content and the effectiveness and efficiency of your response. So please read the questions tonight. If you have a question based on what you see, drop it in the chat. Let's have a conversation. Thanks so much for your participation tonight. Does anybody have a question before I call it a night?
Yeah, Ms. Sands, I'm just curious. I'm looking at the questions now, and it's out of 100. What's the passing mark?
40.
Oh, okay.
David, did you do law school here in the Bahamas or the UK?
I did it in the UK, so I know what's the grading scale again? It's been a while, but
You know, 70 is an A, and I can tell you, it takes significant amount of work to get a 70.
Okay.
Think about it as law school grading, because that's exactly what it is.
I'm very aware of that. 40 is good. 70 is very difficult to get.
And you don't want to just be getting 40, because I can tell you.
No,
if you
I'm just saying, I'm not saying I want to get 40, but I'm saying when you make that mark at 50 and above, but 60 to 70 is, you got to be real good.
Exactly.
Real good, 60 to 70.
It's no walk in the park, and that's just a merit in the grading score. It's no walk in the park. Anybody that has done any UK-based degree or certification would know that to get a 70 is
real good.
You're brilliant. Let's put it like that.
Right.
So I can tell you, in all of my classes, I've never even had 5 people get a 70 in one class. Never. You may have 1 or 2, but that's it.
Few people that you know of, that I know of, who've gone to law school, who have done very well through the University of Western Days, have been 2 people. And you probably know, one is a judge and one is now a minister. I won't call their name.
Yeah, so the grading, I'm saying all of this because I don't want you to be shocked and surprised. Okay, when we talk about paper or whatever it is, I can tell you every semester I have the same problems. The last week, I mean, people putting out their hair, my phone buzzing left, right, and center, and I'm thinking, we had this conversation in day 1. I didn't have the conversation last week because I was aware that not all of the students were in class, but I'm saying it now. Please look at the questions. There is a specific way that they need to be answered. There's a specific format that they need to be answered. All of those things determine your grades. Like I said to you guys last week, for those who was not here, I just finished my master's degree from a UK university, and I got a merit. And trust me, to get an overall merit on a master's degree, I worked very hard. Very hard. I got a few 70s in my modules, and I sure I pull out some of my hair getting that. So it's not a walk in the park. You've paid your monies. This is a very reputable certification that you're earning. So obviously they expect you to earn it, right? This isn't a tick the box. This isn't multiple choice. You're gonna have to put some work into this. Yes? We all on the same page?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
You said that there's a specific format that they are looking for when answering the questions. Is that instruction on the website?
That instruction is on the website, but we're also going to talk about it because then I want to tell you specifically how to answer. But I've been teaching this long enough to know what the words mean in the questions and what they're actually looking for. But we'll do all of that when the time comes, but I want you to read the questions tonight so you can start digesting and thinking, hold on, I get an answer to unit 1 or unit 2. Because if you think about it, we only have 6 units, which means we are 3rd way through already, and this only our 2nd week. At the end of 6 weeks, your paper is due. That doesn't give you a lot of time to kind of play with at all. So you got to be doing this on the go. You're doing this paper as we're going through the units. You cannot wait to finish all 6 units before you look at your paper. Yes?
True. Yes.
Okay.
Great.
Any other questions?
Yes, Ms. Sands, if we're unable to attend a class, watching the recording would be sufficient for.
And that's why we have the chat group, remember?
Okay, okay.
If there's something that you missed, you can always go back to the chat and ask one of your team members. Like I said last week, we have the chat to be able to bounce things off of each other. We're not selfish in our learning. Yes, your papers are for you to write. However, knowledge does not diminish when you share it.
Agreed.
Okay, so are we done? Any more questions?
Ms. Sansi, do any proofreading like with papers like beforehand?
None of that. No. I earn my paper, you all earn yours. I do no proofreadings. Zero. And this is why we help out each other during the whole semester, well, for the 6 weeks that I'm here with you. If you want to ask me questions, you know where to find me, but I do not do any proofreadings. That's not fair to the others. And like I said, I earn mine, so you all earn your own. And I think that I am a sufficiently reachable lecturer that if you do have questions, you should be able to get them answered prior to writing your papers on, even if you've done a first draft or a second draft, you should be able to have a conversation about it and come up with your answer. Sounds a little harsh, but that's what it have to be. I need you to earn this certification because, you know, if you come sit in front of me as an employee, I want to know I help you to that extent. I won't be able to help you and be fair across the board to everybody else. Yes? Fair?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so thank you all very much for coming out. Thank you for participating. If you're unable to make a class, just let me know and you can watch the recording and then you can also ask questions in the chat. So see you all next week. You have 2 things for homework. Look at the paper, read your assignment, and also go on Transparency International. Good night, all. Have a great evening.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.